Thank you all for joining us tonight. This is going to be one of our several in the series of our Candidate Connects. And this evening we have candidates that are
like the only one where I keep
that we're running for
whatever
for the state candidates.
It's like you're an amateur.
And welcome.
Thank you.
And hopefully this is going to get out to all the voters here in San Juan County and all the other counties that we have represented. Let's welcome Mark Duncan, Ryan Lane, and Susan. Tell me how to say your last name.
Aguayo.
All right.
Aguayo.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. And we have about we have a couple of attendees watching, and hopefully we'll get more live. So ladies first, just go ahead and give us a little rundown of who you are and what you're running and everything about you.
My name is Susan Aguayo. I'm originally from New York. I've been living here in New Mexico for 16 years. I moved out here with 4 children. I now have 7 children, and I'm a grandmother of 7 as well. My background is early childhood. I currently am running for District 22. My reason for running is because I've lived here and seen so many changes that have happened that I have not been satisfied with sitting on the sidelines. And I felt it was the right time to take action and make these choices to change things for the better.
All right. Thanks, Susan. How about you, Ryan?
Thanks, Drew. So my name is Ryan Lane. I'm running for State Representative District 3, which encompasses Aztec, Bloomfield, Blanco, Navajo Dam, Cedar Hill, that whole area. I was born and raised in Aztec, graduated from high school there, went to college, ended up going to law school, getting a degree, Juris Doctorate to practice law, came back to New Mexico in 2010, and been practicing here ever since. I have my own law office in downtown Aztec. I've also previously served on the Aztec School Board, and I've served as the city attorney for Bloomfield since 2011. So, between having been raised in this state, having practiced law in this state, having served on the school board and knowing school issues, having served in a local government capacity, knowing local government issues, this is really a way I feel like I can serve my local community and the ability to give back in a practical way. And so that's really why I'm running for state representative. I do not have an opponent in either the primary or the general. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, thank you, Ryan. Mr. Mark Duncan.
I moved or I should say we moved to New Mexico in 1967. So New Mexico, for all intents and purposes, is my home. I'm a small business owner. I've held a few elected positions also. I've been mayor of Kirtland, currently the county treasurer of San Juan County, and I've served on the county commission as well. One of the reasons I'm running is as we take a look at what happens in our state and we look around us in the states that surround us, we are at the last in things that we shouldn't be. We should be first in those things. And the states surrounding us are taking, as I heard a gentleman once say, he said, they're taking our companies, they're taking our businesses, they're taking our employees, and they're taking our kids, and they're not coming back. We need to do something. And so that's the reason I'm running is I want to change. I am tired of us cashing checks in this state that our great grandkids are going to have to work themselves to the bone just to pay off. And that's wrong. That's wrong. So that's a good reason why I'm running right there.
All right. Well,
Susan and I have grandkids, and we don't want this to happen.
Exactly.
well,
exactly.
We've been red for 90 years. It's time for a change, isn't it? Or I'm sorry.
We want to be red, right?
Red.
We've been blue for 90 years, not red. We want to turn
I was
it
like,
red.
really? We're going to make it red.
No, we want to turn it red. We've been,
Yes.
and that's been the unfortunate part. You look at all the surrounding states and they're doing so much better than New Mexico, right? So how would you all propose that we can change it to be more like the states surrounding us?
Well, for me, I think number one that I think we need to really bring to light is mental health. I think that's one of the biggest things that affects us well. And that's why I actually have a nonprofit organization regarding mental health that I founded 5 years ago. I think it's put on the side and I really give it enough attention to realize that regardless of what we go through in life, whether it's maternal mental health or it's mental health regarding some situation we go through, if we had the right resources to help people and give them the help they need, we'd be able to actually get people to do the things they need to do to work and be able to continue supporting their lives and their families and not just put aside that they just sit back and not move forward.
And Susan, with that experience from the mental health, what would you bring to the State House in being able to correct some of that?
So I would like to concentrate the maternal mental health, and it would be bringing the screening. We don't have a screening for women, mandatory screening here when women are pregnant. So we just have a 6-week screening, but there's also men that go through paternal postpartum that we don't have enough awareness of. So if the stigma is that depression is something that can be pushed aside, get over it, and not really looked upon as something serious, our mental health is going high sky and being pushed aside. And I think I would like to bring in a mandatory screening, in many things, but especially maternal mental health.
Mark, Ryan, you guys have anything to add to like the mental health of New Mexico and see some need to change some things?
Go ahead, Ryan.
I'm certainly not a mental health expert other than the fact that I deal with lawyers on a day-to-day basis. So that creates some mental health issues maybe, but
You're an expert.
yeah. I kind of jest, but I know that mental health issues are very serious. So I do recognize that, what the role of state government should be in that. I think honestly, the biggest thing would be to set away for the most part would be to allow practitioners to be able to see their patients and, prescribe whatever they need to help them. So that's probably the extent of what I would weigh in.
Drew, one of the things I think that we struggle with so much is, as a county commissioner, by law, we tour the jail twice a year. We have to make sure that we're taking care of those that are incarcerated, be it meals, be it just making sure that they're safe. And so as you go in there, and I jokingly said Ryan's an expert in this, but he probably is, because if we looked at all of the people that are incarcerated, the mental health challenges those folks face are probably 50 to 70%. And so in some cases, is there a way that we can find treatment and get that taken care of without putting them behind bars? Now, that's an extremely expensive proposal. So how do we do that? Well, we need to find out, and I'm a budget guy. I have a budget, my family has a budget, the state needs to be on a budget, and we need to figure out where we can cut money and allocate it to those resources. Because if we think that this is going to go away, it's not. I read a report this morning just on what the virus has done in the last month and a half, and all of the bad things in life are increasing right now. Your addictions, your mental health abuses, all of those things. And so, yeah, unfortunately, we're going to have to lasso this at some point in time and attack it.
So do you think some of this, and maybe let's go with you, Susan, some of this comes back to even jobs and poverty and different issues that come back to the well-being of that starts in the family and the household as well?
Most definitely. I think, if it was being taken care of at home, this just increases, and it's true, like we were saying in the news, we have more domestic violence. We have now moms more anxiety and depression because they can't have their partners with them in delivery. We don't know what the results would be from a delivery. It could be a healthy delivery. It could be a planned natural to a C-section or stillborn. So definitely what starts here at home, the cuts on the economy right now, the economy is going to be affected, as we said, budget-wise. So many people are going to be more mentally affected. And as he was mentioning also about the jails, we have those women who are having those children in jail. Are they really being screened after that baby has to be taken away? They still have to go through postpartum. And I think that gets overlooked. So mental health is really the key to a lot of the things that we have to really realize that's the key fundamental for us to be able to perform as healthy citizens.
All right. Well, thank you. Ryan, Mark, anything to add there?
Well, I think there's, without a doubt, the economy is a strong enforcer of, I mean, let's just look at it. And I'll just use me as an example. If you had to stay home with me all day, yeah, you'd begin to think, what in the world am I doing? So if you were married to a guy who is, what'd they just do?
You're still there.
I'm not seeing anybody. That's why I was wondering.
We still see you.
Okay. So if you're married to somebody that was in counseling for anger management, for abuse, and all of a sudden you're in lockdown, what happens?
Yeah.
Tell me, if this guy or this woman needs to go in and they're not able to go in and they're able to Zoom or to Skype or even a phone call, that's better than nothing. But they're in, if they've got a good economy and somebody has a place to go and they feel important in their job and they've got a place to go and they go home and every night to a family that they can provide for, that they can, put a roof over their heads and vacation with them once in a while. Those are great things. And that's why it's so important that our economy, get back on the right track. And that's so important why it's just extremely important that we vote red. We have got to do something with our economy in New Mexico.
Yep.
I
Right.
agree.
Anything to add there?
Not really on the mental health issues. I think your original question was how do we turn the state back red? And I think that's kind of the theme even through the mental health questions. And, we could probably talk all night and all next week and all this month about that same topic, but,
Yep.
And it's a very difficult concept, how do we turn New Mexico red? And frankly, I think a lot of that falls back to the Republican Party and our failings, over the last couple decades. I think, honestly, we have a lot of New Mexicans who are Republican and they don't even know it. That if you had them, sort of answer some general questions and you looked at just the output of that survey without labeling R or D, I think you'd realize that a lot of those folks are in fact conservative. And so I take that to mean then that we are failing, at least at some level, to spread a message that people can relate to. So I think, how do we turn the state red? I think we need to educate people on the history of the Republican Party, because if you look at the history, it's actually a very grand and great history. If you look at the history of the Democratic Party, in my opinion, it's a very dark and a very troubled history. If you look at what the free market has the ability to do to people in poverty uniquely, as opposed to government-run programs, the free market has the ability to take people out of poverty in a way that most systems cannot. Again, that's a Republican conservative ideal. And even Democrats that own businesses, that they don't like taxation, right? I mean, who likes taxation? That's a conservative policy. The ability to sell your goods at a price that you think is fair, again, that's a free market philosophy without the government intervening. So, to me, a lot of it comes to, the theme, the message, the education that we have as Republicans, that at the end of the day, it's really not important whether you're Republican or Democrat, in my opinion. It's that we pass laws and policies that give our state the best chance of success. And if that's the end goal, I think the Republican ideals are positioned the best to be able to accomplish that.
Good point, Ryan. And I wholeheartedly agree with you that it's definitely more beyond the parties. Of course, and we were founded with this great experiment, right? Self-governance, and where it's not ruled by a few elite people. It's pretty impressive that we can go and the impact that America has made throughout history in such a short period of time. So that kind of brings a good question is, what is the difference between Republican and Democrat, and what made you want to be a Republican?
That's a good question. So I have what I would call a biblical worldview that, I interpret the world through the lens of the scriptures. And so with that, I think that government has a limited role. It is to, provide a defense, to provide order. But then also as a business owner, I realize that the more that government meddles in our affairs, the more difficult it becomes to engage in commerce. And so, when you start looking at, okay, what is it about the Republican Party that I like? Really, I think the conservative tradition is one that is the tradition of the United States, really, for the most part. When you look at a lot of our successful moves and our successful policies, it's built on, this idea that we are a nation that's governed by laws, not by men, right? So we're a constitutional republic. That's a very important concept. And so what's in that text is what governs us, not the will of a particular leader, or, mayor, governor, president, whatever label you want to put on them. Again, that's a conservative ideal. We could probably go through all these, I think right to life is, paramount. Without life, there really is nothing. So that would be from conception all the way through a natural death. I'm a strong supporter of the right to life. And honestly, I think that you're going to start to see some Democrats that will be leaving the Democrat Party because of that right to life issue. The last probably 40 years, there was some room for pro-life Democrats. But as you watch sort of the national debates, there is no more room for a pro-life Democrat. It's either you're pro-choice or you get out of our party. So I think that's an area too where we can maybe find some crossover with some folks. And I'm monopolizing the time now, so I'll be quiet. But.
Susan, Mark, you want to add to that?
Oh, okay. So for me, what is that question again? I know somebody Republican, you said, right?
It was, what do you feel is the difference between Republican and Democrat, and what makes you a Republican?
I grew up, my upbringing being Democrat as a kid. And I think as a child, I call a child 18 years old, older now. You just go, my parents said Democrat, you just do Democrat. But when you get older and you start, like you said, I think understanding what each one stands for, definitely pro-life, definitely understanding, biblically, where you stand in life, where do you see yourself in the future being independent? That's nobody controlling you. And I think as much as we were raised in my household and then raised my kids, about being able not to expect a handout and be independent and be, a person that sees ahead in the future, we needed to realize who do we stand as Republicans, as someone that knows how to be able to have their constitutional rights not taken away and be able to express themselves, of knowing that we can make things happen for ourselves, personally.
Yeah. Mark, how about you?
I'm a big proponent of self-reliance. I taught my children this. I believe it. I encourage others to believe that. If you're self-reliant, you're not relying on a government. You're not relying on a mayor. You're not relying on a governor. You're not relying on a president. Now, granted, there's always room for, when there's capital projects and stuff like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about second, third, fourth generation welfare. I'm talking about those who get preached at that, we're going to take care of you. Your first and foremost responsibility is to yourself, and you need to take care of yourself. And so I've encouraged my children and others to, I don't care. Don't call yourself an R or D. Just look at the platforms of each one of them. Look at who tells you it's your responsibility to go up every day, to, get up, go to work, come home, take care of your family, put a roof over their head, and get your kids educated and help them to be a productive part of society. On the other hand, if you think the government can do a really good job of raising you from birth to death, raising your kids from birth to death, and providing for you, then that's what we have. But I'm like Ryan. I think we have a lot of folks that their party has left them behind. And I don't know what they call that new party, but we have lots of good folks that I believe firmly that they are as conservative as I am, but they don't know what to do. And they don't know where to go because they're no longer accepted in their own party. And so we welcome them with open arms. And somebody tell me how I can see you guys again.
It may be a gift that you don't have to look at us, Mark. So
Oh, no, it's not, man. If I had the ability to talk, Ryan, I'll tell you what, you got a gift.
thanks. Well, and to Mark's last point, I guess that is why I think it comes back to Republicans when we talk about sort of these fringe Democrats who feel like their party has left them. I think that is our responsibility to reach out, and talk to those folks and explain the Republican message, Republican ideals, that there are conservatives that actually have a heart and care about people, care about the lost, care about those impoverished, care about mental health, for example, as we talked about here tonight. I think that burden falls on us to have a message that resonates with people. And I think a big component of it is the history of the party. As I studied that, because for a while I was registered as an independent, and because frankly, R or D didn't matter to me. I just wanted policies and results that benefited the people. But as I studied the history of the party, I thought, man, what a gem there if we could, just explain our history and our roots. And if you juxtapose that against the Democratic Party, I think, man, it's a winning message. So
Yeah, you think the history is on the side of Republicans, where almost every aspect that you look at, correct?
yeah, I mean, it's funny, if all you did was listen to the media, you would think that Republicans are steeped in racism, that we hate the little guy, we hate women. But it just couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, the opposite is true. Unfortunately, it's historically, it's been the Democratic Party that's opposed minorities, that's opposed measures for women, that's opposed, small business and those things. So
Yeah, you bring up two good points. So you look at the Republican Party was the anti-slavery party. That's why it started, right? And
Yes.
and that's what how about women's rights? Who recognized that right?
Uh-huh.
And I say recognize because we didn't give that right, correct? That right was given from God. All we did was recognize it. So it's we put it where government recognizes that right because it's given by God. So
I like what you said, Ryan. Sorry, I just like what Ryan said because I have a few friends, exactly what he just said. It's exactly where they feel like, well, they don't believe, women's rights. They don't believe, people should have, a job. And I'm thinking, you're just really stuck on looking through a binocular and not even listening or looking to everything that you need to be educated on. But exactly well said. People don't really take the time out to really educate themselves more.
yeah, and I think we get the MO that we're the party of the elitist and do not care about the working class or the poor. And like Ryan says, I think that's pretty far from the truth. It's who's the responsibility, and that's us individually. I think if you look at the W-2s and tax returns from Republicans, they have greater charitable giving than Democrats do because that's our responsibility. Do you guys feel the same way?
I used to teach one of my friends, and I told him, I said, both Democrats and Republicans want to give. And I'll even say it's 50-50. I said, the difference between the two of us is I give out of my own pocket, whereas you want to give out of my pocket too.
Right. And that's we've turned so much over to the charity, over to the government, even schooling, religion, a lot of the things got turned over to government. And rather than taking on, because sometimes that's the easier play, but I think that's Republicans. No, it's still our responsibility to do those things. So kind of get down to back to some basics. What are rights? Anybody?
man, that is such a great question. And we could spend a lifetime debating that. I mean, I think a lot of it, without getting too historical or philosophical, it comes down to, are you an Edmund Burke fan or or are you a Thomas Paine fan? And what that really means is, where do you believe rights are derived from? Are they given from the government, from the sovereign, or are there certain rights that all human beings have, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity, of income level? And the Burke tradition, which is what really the American idea was spawned out of, was no, we have certain unalienable rights, which means, that they can't be taken away, which means also that they weren't given. So what are rights? I mean, to me, that's a huge question, because if the answer is that the government giveth, then that means the government can also taketh away. And unfortunately, I think it's becoming a more popular worldview that, in fact, rights are, as this social contract theory would suggest, rights are given by the government. And that leads to some very, very bad consequences if that's true.
Yeah. Susan, Mark?
I would say rights are really having the freedom protected by the law. I think the law should be able to protect us, our rights of what we choose. Not, it shouldn't have to be just the way, as we're saying, other people think, but we have the rights to really make our choices, and our choice should be protected by law.
So law being government, so government's there to protect rights. You think that's
It
pretty
should.
fundamental?
I think it should be, but I think it shouldn't be taken away, what our rights would be as our constitutional rights. But it should be, protected by the law. Yeah.
Yep. So how about equality versus equal rights?
That's me.
Heard that one before? That we
Yes.
so we provide, or that the United States should believe that there's a level playing field, that we're equal on our equality versus equal opportunity.
Okay. So for me, I think the equal opportunity would be,
So
I think exactly what Mark was saying. Yeah.
So can there be both equality and equal opportunity?
That's kind of sticky, because for
What do
me,
you
I
guys think?
think equal opportunity comes to the individual that really makes their good choices.
Yeah, that's a philosophical one there for you. Mark,
Yeah.
Ryan, what do you guys think?
Let me just say this. Roger Staubach, great quarterback. I believe I have every right to go out and try to be a great quarterback as well. He was extremely talented, and so I had every opportunity, and so it was provided for me. But are we equals? No. Are we ever going to be equals? No. Same with Michael Jordan. And I like basketball a little bit, and my hang time's as good as his. My vertical leap, is about 30 inches shorter than his. But hey, I had a chance. But he was given some gifts from God that I have never been given and never will be given. So equality is not there. It's not the same, but I had the same opportunity that he had. So while I may have other strengths that neither one of those two have, I certainly cannot compete on their level of competition at all.
Yeah, it's the choices. It's true, though. I very well said.
Yeah, so I would draw a distinction between equal opportunity versus equal results. And I think we confuse those things. Unfortunately, I think my generation, the millennials and on down, we want a guarantee of equal results. And so if you make more money than me, or you have more stuff than me, or you're better looking than me, or whatever it is, it's inherently unfair because the system is rigged. And that's the narrative that's put out there. I believe more in really what Jefferson described as this idea of a natural aristocracy, which was basically you give everybody an equal opportunity, and the most talented and the brightest will rise to the top, and from those people should become our leaders. Maybe we've come up with a different phrase, but that's how he described it. But that's what a system of law and order, a nation of laws, not of men, produces, is equal opportunity, but not an equal result.
Yeah, and I think you can also say too that you would have to, if you're wanting to try to provide equality, you would have to infringe on other people's rights as well, right?
Oh, yeah, sure, certainly.
Now, how about providing equal opportunity? Would you necessarily have to be infringing on others' rights? Uh-oh, we lost Susan.
Oh.
All right. So how about this one? Do you plan on promoting any changes to existing taxes? If so, why?
Yes. I would love to balance the budget, and I understand it's difficult. I heard one of our leaders say one time, it's more difficult than you can imagine. Next question. Look, we elected you to go down there and make those tough decisions. Now we expect that. And yes, I understand it is extremely difficult, but we have a job to do as the people's representatives of this state. And I believe that we have to get that budget back to something that our great grandchildren are not going to be paying off. And you know, we're in deep doo-doo this year for that very same reason. Things happen. And so I would love to get to where we can balance our budget. And does that mean that every program that's ever been funded will be funded? No, it does not. It means exactly the opposite of that. We've got to take it down where government is a lot smaller than it is right now. And people are going to have to be more self-reliant upon themselves to figure out how, if they categorize things and they say, this is really important to me, then you may have to figure out how to accomplish that with you or your family. And that's not a bad thing. So yeah, I'd love to go in there and say, look, let's quit taxing our citizens to death. Let's balance our budget, or at least try to balance our budget instead of doing what we're doing, and see what we can do.
Okay.
You know, I won't harp on the balanced budget issue because I think Mark did a good job there. You know, as far as tax changes, I mean, obviously we would all love to see taxes lower. I mean, in terms of what's realistic, I guess that's another topic. I think the idea of a flat tax, especially at the state level, you know, when you talk about equality, that's something that comes to mind, and it is doable. Our neighbors to the north actually have a flat tax. That's what the state of Colorado has. So it's certainly feasible. That would be one thing I think that we could look at. I think we also need to consider how heavily we tax oil and gas. Some of our excise taxes, I think those could be evaluated as well. And then, you know, there's the sort of the unlabeled taxes, you know, that professionals, for example, have to pay in order to just to be able to operate within their particular profession. They have to, you know, pay a fee to the government. So, you know, I think those could be evaluated as well. Certainly rolling back some of the licensing requirements. Just this whole idea that government is the gatekeeper, I think is troubling to me, and it seems to be spreading. So I think that's something that we need to challenge as well.
Yeah, it seems like every time you turn around, you're paying a fee for a registration fee for this or that, or license fee, right? And that's what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that's local, county, and state.
Fishing license, gun license, well, hopefully not a gun license, but it doesn't surprise me. Pretty soon you're going to have to register your bullets. Let's hope not. That's why we got to get you guys in there, right? So if anybody has some questions, you can raise your hand down at the lower bar. If you hover down there, you can raise your hand or type that in the chat box if you have some questions. One last question for you guys is what element of the state's government is most effective and why? If there's such a thing. That seems kind of oxymoron, especially for New Mexico, but is there part of the state that's effective?
Probably signing folks up for welfare. I mean, I think we're very effective at that, but are we as effective of you know, getting people back on the workforce? If we pay a guy as much as he can make out in the real world to stay home, he's going to stay home. And so we've got to figure out a different way to do that. And that may be your welfare is not near as much as you could make if you went out into the workforce. And so then that would make us try as a state to try to compete with our neighbors so they wouldn't continue to take our employees, the citizens, our jobs, our businesses, and our kids and our grandkids. So, I'm saying, guys, let's put on a different hat. The hat we've been wearing for 90 years is not working. Let's do something different.
Yep. Right?
I think if the question is, what could our state government, what areas could they do better? I think we would pretty much across the board say everything. Now, in terms of the question being, what do they do well? I think police and fire honestly come to mind. I think we have a state that does a good job, both with policing and in fire protection. To the extent that state government's involved in keeping rural hospitals going, I think that's important too. But man, it's not just me, but so many of my clients I know, when I talk to them about dealing with state level of government and even local municipalities, when you talk about dealing with state agencies, it's very frustrating. There's so many processes that you have to follow. And if you miss one little thing, I've seen big projects fall apart because of that. So much to be improved upon, certainly. Yeah.
I agree with Ryan wholeheartedly about our police and fire.
Yeah, that is one.
Okay,
Hi,
I'm back.
there you go. How are you?
I'm sorry, we have all the computers running with kids going to school and mine, and it seems like everything is bouncing me off. Sorry, trying to get on.
Well, good. Well, we'll catch you up. We'll back up to you and on a couple of these questions or one of the. So, do you plan to promote any changes to existing taxes? If so, why?
I personally believe, where I think we should do a tax break would be on the small businesses that have been affected, especially right now through this quarantine, and as well also for the oil. I think it's really affected us in oil and gas, especially up in Farmington and the areas that the district is covering.
Well, if I could vote for you, I already would. Yeah, we're definitely being impacted with being part of the oil and natural gas. And especially up here in San Juan, we're mostly natural gas too. So the more we can sell natural gas, the better. Another question is, what element of the state's government is most effective and why? Susan?
I'm sorry, say it again.
These guys have been quite or answering these questions already, so I'm going to give you an opportunity on this. Other question is, what element of the state's government is most effective and why? If that's actually possible, that New Mexico is actually effective at things.
That's so hard to think. State's government is most effective and why? Oh, I'm not ready to answer that one. I think, I don't know, I really want to answer that one. I think in an effective way.
So education, taxes, government. Ryan had a good one, which was police and fire are pretty effective here. Mark had getting people signed up on welfare.
I think there is not really much affected,
So what areas would you like to see the most drastic improvements, or maybe even the low hanging fruit of some easy things that we can accomplish first?
Well, definitely education and the unemployment right now that we're being affected. But for me, it's education. I think the education is where we always, and we go back to everything that we have that we're dealing with. Always, mostly, is education. And I speak of even getting the right tools or the proper funds, not just to give money into really, higher education, but where the funds really use the proper tools, to help.
Maybe even having school choice, is that maybe
The school choice? Well, the school choice, I'll give you an example, a personal example. We live here in San Diego County. San Diego County is supposed to have really good school districts. But I've found myself, for my older children, they graduated from here, for my younger children and my grandkids that live here in San Diego County, I have them going to a charter school outside of the district, and it shouldn't have to be that way. We should really be able to keep our children here if the proper tools are given in the education that our children need to have. And that for me includes obviously special needs, children who have those special needs in the education. I feel they're not given here and they shouldn't have to leave the county.
So maybe even
There's always
deregulations and things where you can have more charter schools and more choices?
more
possibly?
choices. Yeah.
Because I look at New Mexico too, then it's one of the few states that has seven universities, where you look at Arizona and they have three, and they're a much bigger populous state.
See.
So even at our university level, we have the education, but what's sad is that we're training kids up and to leave New Mexico. So what would be a good way to help keep those kids that we educate, and then that way we have a good return on our investment?
I think incentives. I think incentives, because that's one thing I think what happens is that if kids do get their education here, and I'll go back to mental health as I spoke earlier, we need therapists, psychiatrists, social workers, they graduate and they leave. But yet, if they got the lottery from here, I think they should have an incentive to stay here for a short time and give back to what was given to them, because we need them here. That's where I think our education is lacking of the choices that are being made, and they just leave.
Yep.
The
Well,
school
thanks, Susan.
vouchers really be good, yeah.
Mark, going back to something that you said, you had talked about the welfare, and then it's hard. Sometimes people make more money on welfare. And so how can we bridge that gap where sometimes you get that job and then it's cold turkey, and then you're cut off, and it takes you a while to get back up to pace, even to get back to where almost to the point of welfare. Do you think there could be a way to bridge that gap?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there needs to be a way to bridge that gap, because the folks that are out of work right now, I mean, I was talking to a few folks even today, and they said, we're making more with what the federal government is giving us than what we would have made on regular welfare. And so, and I don't know if that's true or not. I have no idea. But that being said, if I were out of work for 3 months and I was getting welfare for that 3 months, and I don't know how much welfare is, but it's not a lot of money, not a lot of money. But welfare should be given with the idea in mind, this is a short-term fix. Somehow we've got to figure out, be it, do you need to go back to school? Do we need to train you in something else? And I'm not a big bricks and mortar type of guy. I think our kids are going to be learning, grandkids are going to be learning on a computer. They're going to be, up at Purgatory skiing, and in between runs, they're going to be doing a class. It might be a welding class. It might be, so traditional school, I think we need to rethink that and say, let's open it up. Do you go half a day at homeschool and then half a day to a regular school? Or vice versa? Do you go half a day to a homeschool and then go to a technical school? But we've got to be able to switch gears very, very quickly. And unfortunately, government is extremely slow in that category. Yeah. And so it drags behind, and consequently, some of our people are left behind in the dust with nowhere, and there's no bridge for them. When they do get a job, then yes, we have to give them a chance to make up for that 3 or 4 or 6 months, or even a year in some cases, or longer. But just to sign up for welfare without ever having it. I talked with a mother one time. She was on it. She was a grandmother now. Her daughter was on it, and her granddaughter was now on it. They never had any intentions of getting off of it. Never. And unfortunately, that's wrong.
And I agree, what you're saying. I think what's happened too is that not everybody's ready for college. Like you said, there's a lot of vocational programs that are out there. And I think they should go back to old times. And even my time, they were teaching in schools how to write a check. They were teaching about home economics. They were teaching, you graduate high school with some kind of understanding that you could be independent, take care of yourself if you decide to make it a vocational career. And a lot of that's been taken away, and I'm not undergrading the point of sports or saying that's not important. It's not. But I do feel that we should add on programs that could make someone more understanding when once they graduate high school, they have something to stand on and not just depend on someone else.
Ryan, anything to add?
Well, I think we kind of spanned a few things there, but I think when you talk about welfare, unfortunately, I find it to be very dehumanizing. There's something about having a job and being able to work and earn a living that I think is part of our, our makeup, our identity. It's an important task. And I understand that some people aren't able to because of circumstances. And so I think that's where the focused help needs to be. But it's certainly not a long-term solution, as both Mark and Susan described. And then when you talk about education, I think we need to look at some different approaches. I don't think the answer is to splash more money, because man, we spend a tremendous percentage of our budget already on state education. And I'm a product of a K through 12 public school, Aztec High School, and I got a good education there. I really did. So I do support the idea of public schools. But I look at, I think there's some strategies out there. You look at our neighbor to the west, Arizona, they have this thing called like a student tuition organization, I think is what they call them. And basically what I could do is, if I knew of a kid that wanted to go to a private school, but his family couldn't afford it, I could write a check, say $2,500, to help go towards that kid's tuition. And then in exchange, I get a tax credit against my state income taxes for that contribution. That's a practice in Arizona that's been going on for some time. It's been challenged in the courts and has been upheld as constitutional. And that's both sectarian and non-sectarian schools. So I think that is a way, okay, how do we provide more opportunities for kids? I think we just need to look at some different strategies, and not that those student tuition organizations is the answer, but it may be one of the answers that we need to evaluate, instead of the answer just being, well, we have to throw more state money at this problem that doesn't seem to be really solving anything.
And I think going back, like you said, going back to the welfare, people need to realize, that it's a hands up, not a handout, because it's a temporary thing to help out, and I think when you're saying about education, I think is being able to really understand where is it being thrown into, because I personally, like I said, I have my kids being able to go to a charter school outside of our school district, compared to my older ones, because there've been things that have not been satisfying as a parent, to see where they're getting the education they deserve to have.
Yep. Thank you, Susan.
Drew, could I add one thing to that, Drew?
Sure.
Too often, when I go to a grocery store, for example, and I'm standing in line waiting to check out, and I look at the magazine rack, for example, and I see the latest magazine article that says, if you're not making $250,000 a year, you're a failure. And then one right next to that, if you don't look like Miss Swimsuit edition of the summer, you're a failure. And I think the media pushes that, and man, that drives me absolutely nuts. The woman that I speak to most at the county is probably the janitor.
Anybody knows the most.
She is a servant to all, and she's happy with what she does. She does not make $250,000. I probably wish she made more, but that frustrates me to no end. We should be happy with what we make, and if we want to better ourselves, go back to law school, and then you'll be making that $250,000. And sorry, Ryan, but what I'm saying is the media drives a false narrative that is absolutely false. I can be happy making far less than the CEO of some corporation. I cannot take that with me, and the happiness that I get in this life is not derived from a dollar.
Yep.
It is
Good
from
point.
people and the relationships we make with them.
All right. Thanks, Mark. So, Mike Tillman.
Yeah.
Maybe, hey, Mike, you have a question for us? You had your hand raised?
hit the wrong button.
All right. Well, thanks,
You already covered education, and Ryan made the right statement. Quit throwing money at it. Let's make
Yep.
some changes.
All right. Thanks, Mike. So guys, we're going to wrap it up. So if you just want to state your name, what you're running for again, just kind of wrap it up and we'll call it a night. Thank you guys for being here. So whoever wants to go first.
Again, my name is Susan Aguayo. I'm running for District 22. I want to be able to be the voice to take action for the changes that we need to make to the state to turn it back red.
Thanks, Susan. Good to see you.
Thank you too. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ryan.
So, I'm running for District 3. I'm unopposed. So my pitch will be for people actually to go and support Mark and Susan, and even support them with your checkbook. It is so vital for us to be able to flip one or both of those seats to Republicans. So please consider supporting those seats because those are very, very important.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. I'm
Thanks,
Mark
Ryan.
Thank
Duncan.
you.
I'm running for state rep in District 4.
Oh, go ahead and say that again. It cut off in the last bit there, Mark.
Okay, I'm Mark Duncan, and I'm running for state rep District 4.
All right. Well, great. Thank you guys for showing up. Check out the YouTube page. You can see this recording. Also, check out our webpage. That's at rpsjc.com. And thank you and good night. Start voting. Early voting started today. So you could do that at the county seat or on starting May 16th. You can start doing that at the convenience centers. Thank you and God bless and good night. Thank you.
Good
Thanks,
night.
Drew.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Ryan, Susan, see ya.
Good night. Good night, guys.
Night.
Thank you. Good night.